Okay, welcome everyone. I think this is our fourth workshop in the global series.
Yeah,
And
fifth.
is it the fifth?
Yeah, because you did two the other night, didn't you?
No, this is a series. So this is the
Okay.
fourth one in this group.
Okay.
And then we have two more. So in the previous, if you were at the presentation workshop that Sharon Fisher did, she
Mhm.
went to the Commission on the Status of Women. We had we talked about that for several minutes, actually more than that. So this,
Wasn't she talking more about the UN?
well, she was talking about the UN, but she referenced Commission on the Status
Right.
of Women.
Right.
And we were
Okay.
talking about like the side groups and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, it came up in topic is my point.
Hmm.
So, Gail is going to go into more detail on what it is and how it's connected to Sir Optimus and how we can potentially get involved. So I will turn it over to you. And
There's Darlene Nevis of SI Los Banos.
there she is.
Oh, you're muted, honey.
Where's my shoe? Who is that? That's Darlene. She's the president of Los Banos.
Great.
Why can't I share? Hold on. Working on it.
Look, share down in the corner there.
Yeah, but I gotta find the right
Oh,
thing. Here we go. All right, are we seeing the PowerPoint?
Now we are. You want to fill the screen? You don't have to show my stuff.
Not going to. Okay, good.
There we go.
Get this out of the way. All right, go take it away, Gail. Oh,
Already.
Gail.
All right. I love the graphic that Judy came up with for
Thank
this.
you.
I really like it. So thank you for sharing an hour of your Thursday evening with me to find out about the Commission on the Status of Women, something that I've been following for several years and got a really good education putting this together. I thought I knew all about it. So tonight I hope to answer all of your questions about what the heck COSW or CSW, all of that stands for Commission on the Status of Women, those little shorthands. So let's look at the next slide.
Hold on.
I'm not going anywhere. So the Commission on the Status of Women, COSW or CSW, it depends on, in California and San Francisco, they use COSW. United Nations uses CSW. So I have a little history. I really like history. The Commission on the Status of Women got its start with the newly formed United Nations. United Nations committed to the advancement of women with the signing of the United Nations Charter in San Francisco in 1945, right at the end of World War II. Who knew? Its preamble declared faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, they put that in there, and of nations large and small. And I really like that they included women and did not just lump us together with man or mankind, that, the kind of stuff that they like to do. So tonight we will cover a brief history, what it is, our Sir Optimus connection, our Sir Optimus UN connection, how that works, what has been done so far, how you can get involved, and give you some future dates. Can I have the next slide, please? It's all about girl power. Thank you. In 1946, the signing of the United Nations Charter committed to the advancement of women. In 1946, the establishment on the Commission on the Status of Women, their first meeting was February 1947 at Lake Success, New York. They started out to protect the human rights of women and awareness raising, on the status and situation of women around the world, bringing unfamiliar issues into the international political arenas. From the beginning, the Commission attracted the interest, participation, and support of the growing international women's movement, and Eleanor Roosevelt was very involved. And I think they learned a lot after World War II, because women take the brunt, in my opinion, and a lot of experts' opinion, when wars are going on. By the mid-1960s, the Commission began to address women's role in the economic and social development. So delegates from developing countries drew attention to the situation of women in rural areas and the need to enhance their contributions and address their needs. like not having to walk miles to the river to get your water and haul it back. That's just a small example. In 1975, the Commission and non-government organizations, those are NGOs. I'm sure you've seen that before. So the Commission on the Status of Women and the non-government organizations urged the UN to observe an International Women's Year, culminating in the first Global Women's Conference in Mexico City, where they adopted a global plan of action to improve the status of women. From 1976 to 1985, that became the United Nations Decade for Women, with world conferences creating a momentum for change and adopting the quote-unquote platform for action in Beijing in 1995. I don't know if very many of you remember this. It was a really big deal. I think that Hillary Clinton was our first lady at the time, and she attended and was very involved in that. In 1979, the UN General Assembly adopted the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Are any of you familiar with that CEDAW, C-E-D-A-W? It's on the screen. It's the second to the last thing. And, you know, some cities have CEDAW awards where they honor local women who have done a lot of things to eliminate discrimination against women. And CEDAW is big, and it keeps on going. This was a landmark.
It came up a lot at the convention in Dublin.
Yeah.
They kept saying CEDAW, and I'm like, wait, I should know what that is.
Right.
Well, spell it out. I recognized it, but
yeah, it's very interesting when we hear this next part. This was a landmark treaty, you know, that went into force in 1981, and by June 2006 had been ratified by 183 countries, but not the U.S. Do you remember that coming up in Dublin, Judy?
Yes, I do.
Up to your legislators.
I do.
Yes, it is like, I was like, what? What are you talking about? The United States is only one of 7 countries, including, get this, Iran, Sudan, Somalia, Nauru, Palau, and Tonga that have not yet ratified it, even though advancing women's human rights is fundamental to our national security interests and a cornerstone of our foreign policy. Do you want to know why we haven't ratified it?
Yeah.
Anyone? Yeah, let me tell you. The main arguments brought forward against the CEDAW ratification by the U.S. and some other countries, well, in the U.S., are largely reflective of the increasingly dogmatic and insurmountable political culture divide between U.S. conservatives and progressives. The controversy is that Article 6 concerning equality in marriage and the family and Article 10 relating to employment proved to be particularly controversial, as did the question of whether the declaration should call for the abolition of the customs and laws perpetuating discrimination or for their modification or change. And, you know, we're talking about some really basic things, you know, genital mutilation, child marriage, that the husband has a right to abuse his wife, in, you know, birth control, different kinds of birth control. There's a lot. And when you think about it, it's not just so-called third world countries or coming out or developing countries, but the U.S. has just a lot going on, and they're not going to do it. So
pretty unbelievable.
I know. So the United States is not part of CEDAW. There's 3 factors. The institutional rules governing treaties in the United States is one. And as a lawyer, I can understand that because only the Congress can approve treaties, and Congress is split and they don't like certain things, right? And number 2, partisan conflict over the United Nations and the women's rights between the Democratic and Republican parties. There we go again. And changes in the geopolitical climate that have reshaped the standing of the United States. It's complicated. Can I have the next slide, please?
No.
Nope.
There you go. Let's be
So how it works. So the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, that was established a year later in 1946 as a mechanism to promote, report, and monitor issues relating to the political, economic, civil, social, and educational rights of women. It was a unique official structure for drawing attention to women's concerns and leadership within the United Nations. The United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, as I said, first met at Lake Success in February of 1947. All 15 government representatives were women. This was unusual in those days, which distinguished the UNCSW from other UN movements. And the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women has continued to maintain a majority of women delegates. During its first session, the Commission declared as one of its guiding principles this: to raise the status of women, irrespective of nationality, race, language, or religion, to equality with men in all fields of human enterprise, and to eliminate all discrimination against women in the provisions of statutory law, in legal maxims or rules, or an interpretation of customary law. That's a big bite of something to do here, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know if I kind of mentioned this. I mean, some presentations I made in the past. In 1975, the Seropolis International Americas had, their big, whatever that year convention was, or something like that. And they wanted to see in I can't remember, it was in 50 years from 1975, that 50% or more women would have higher degree educations equal to men and have higher jobs. And maybe I think I did this for a different group for my friend Nanelle, but in the reality of it is that 51 to 52% of women have higher education degrees out of all the higher education degrees. So we met that, whether they have made it into those positions that pay higher money and have more responsibility, that's another question. Last ceiling thing, but they've got the degrees, we're working on it. Next slide, please. So what it is the Commission on the Status of Women is the principal global intergovernmental body exclusively dedicated to the promotion of gender equality and empowerment of women. I read that pretty good. I meant to let you read that, but let me go on. In 1965, the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, they include girls in their naming, was established. It is a state agency working to amplify gender inequities and injustices, champion solutions, and deliver connections to relevant, timely resources to women and girls across the state. Their programs are designed to address key disparities because they say California women are essential. Clearly we are. Did you know that a lot of counties in California, plus numerous cities, have their own active commission on the status of women? Anyone know that?
Yes. I know it because I was Googling to try to find an image to use for the flyer. And I got like the website for every commission on status of women, like by city and county in the state. It was really interesting. Like,
it's incredible. Yeah. And this is just California. I didn't bother to go into the rest of the 50 states, but this Commission on the Status of Women concept that started in 1946 has just blossomed, and it's still going strong compared to other women's organizations that, did what they wanted to do and then stopped. Next slide. So for more than 50 years, the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls has identified and worked to eliminate inequities in state laws, practices, and conditions that affect California's women. They were established as a state agency with 17 appointed commissioners in 1965. It only took 20 years. The commission regularly assesses gender equity in health, safety, employment, education, and equal representation in the military and in the media. Women have been working on this for 70 years or something? How long ago was it? 1945? Someone do the math. Any accountants?
I'm an accountant.
accountants don't do math in their head, just for the record.
Oh, okay. So the commission provides leadership through research. So
Wait.
someone do the math and let me know.
Julie
How
can
many
back
years?
me up.
The commission provides leadership through research, policy and program development, education, outreach and collaboration, advocacy, and strategic partnerships. Does anybody remember when Seropolis International of the Americas used to do what they called white papers and had them on their website?
Yes.
Yeah, I loved them.
I love the white papers.
Yeah, and I can't find them anymore. They're archived or something, but that's what the Commission on Status of Women, they do that. They do the white papers and have them around. So the commission works in a culturally inclusive manner to promote equality and justice for all women and girls by advocating on their behalf with the governor, the legislature, and other public policymakers, and by educating the public in areas of economic equity and other key issue areas identified by the commission that significantly affect women and girls. You probably know this already, but they found that the COVID-19 shutdowns affected more women and girls than it did men. The commission has formed many committees, including advisory, childcare, child support and custody, community involvement, criminal justice, education, employment, executive, health, homemaker, marital property, and public information. And the notable task force that they have are those on minority women, equal pay, and comparable worth. That's just a snapshot of some of the work that the commission does over time. The California Commission is comprised of 17 members, 9 public members, 6 legislative members, and 2 statutory members. That would be I think statutory member. I messed up. I forgot to figure out what that was. I think that statutory members are not appointed. Are appointed, not elected, I meant to say. The appointing authorities are, I was right. The appointing authorities are gubernatorial, the governor, Senate, Assembly, and then once again statutory that the statutes require. So California's commission collaborates with international government delegations, state and county or city governments, California state agencies, public and private business entities, non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, foundations, nonprofits, and local commissions on women and girls. That's a lot. During the first 2 years of the pandemic, as I said a second ago, women in the United States lost more than 5.4 million net jobs. Data shows that the economic crisis exacerbated the cumulative and collective crisis women in California were already experiencing. The erosion of women's well-being, human rights, and economic status will likely continue unless it's halted by deliberate policy interventions and strategic support from government and key stakeholders. The California Commission is in partnership with the California Research Bureau, and they conducted an initial literature review of the state of women in California for the Women's Recovery Response and effort launched in 2021, right after COVID's had their soft opening. So here's an example of the Commission on Status of Women we have in California. Alameda County established one in 1975. Contra Costa established one in 1984. LA County, 1975. Marin, 1974. San Diego, these are counties. San Diego, 1965. The city and county of San Francisco established theirs in 1975, and it's funded by the taxpayers. San Luis Obispo, 1975, excuse me. I don't know when San Joaquin started theirs. I couldn't find anything on it, so I'm not sure if it's still running. But Santa Cruz established theirs in 73, as well as Santa Barbara and Santa Clara. Sonoma established one in 1975, Stanislaus in 79, and Sacramento in 1965. And I looked all these up. They're all still functioning. I couldn't find anything on San Joaquin. And their cities, several cities, including San Francisco, also have their own commission on status of women. Berkeley, Carson, Compton, Glendale, Los Angeles, Pasadena, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, it calls it a women's advisory board, in San Diego. It's kind of like lobbying, right? They really push. And I know that in San Francisco, the Commission on Status of Women really pushes for enforcement of the domestic violence laws and the temporary restraining and permanent restraining orders to protect women, and call the police force to task when there's failures. Next slide. So the United Nations started it, and it grew with the help of Sir Optimist. Now the Commission on Status of Women is a functional commission of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. And I didn't put it up there, but I'm sure you've seen those initials, ECOSOC or something. That's the United Nations Economic and Social Council. They're one of the main United Nations organs within the United Nations. And the Commission on Status of Women has been described as the United Nations organ, that organ's promoting gender equality and empowerment of women, part of it. Every year, the representatives of the member states, and when they say member states, they mean countries, gather at the United Nations headquarters in New York to evaluate progress on gender equality, identify the challenges, set global standards, and formulate concrete policies to promote gender equality and advancement of women worldwide. The United Nations agencies actively follow their mandates to bring women into development approaches and programs and conferences. They participate at the prep comms, they design strategy, they hold caucus meetings, they network about the various agenda items that are being negotiated in various committees, and they work as an informed lobbyist at conferences themselves. So the Commission on Status of Women is one of the commissions of the United Nations that do not limit participation to states only, meaning countries. They, for example, the non-government organizations, NGOs like Sir Optimist, are also allowed to participate in the sessions of the Commission on Status of Women and attend caucuses and panels and organize their own parallel events. And we took part in 2 parallel events in the last 2 years with the United Nations Convention. And this is all through the, the Non-Governmental Committee on the Status of Women. Excuse me. in New York. This is particularly important for contested territories such as Taiwan, which is not a member of the UN because it's contested whether it's really a country.
Mm.
In the past few years, NGOs from Taiwan, such as the National Alliance of Taiwan Women's Associations, have been able to participate in Commission on Status of Women sessions, which is really, really important since they don't have a voice in the United Nations. But they have a voice with the Commission on Status of Women, and that voice is carried forth to the United Nations. Next one. So the Commission on Status of Women's mandate to promote gender equality and the empowerment of women includes drafting recommendations and reports to the United Nations Economic and Social Council. That's that ECOSOC thing. On promoting women's rights, the monitoring and implementation of measures for the advancement of women, and to identify issues affecting gender equality. They also take a leading role in monitoring and reviewing progress and problems in the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and in mainstreaming a gender perspective in United Nations activities. Meeting annually in New York, it's coming up in March, to discuss progress and gaps in the implementation of key global policies. The Commission on Status of Women affords a unique opportunity for the representatives of the United Nations member states, the civil society organizations like Seroptimist, and United Nations entities to promote and document emerging issues that affect gender equality and the empowerment of women. And then they agree on further actions to accelerate progress and promote women's enjoyment of their rights in political, economic, and social fields. And then these outcomes and recommendations are forwarded to the Economic and Social Council for follow-up. We have the next slide. So this is a little snapshot of what it has done. This is Eleanor Roosevelt holding the English language version of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1949. One of the United Nations Commission on Status of Women's first tasks was to contribute to the drafting of that Universal Declaration. Commission members inserted gender-sensitive language, arguing against references to men as a synonym for humanity, and phrases like men are brothers. They received resistance from members of the Commission on Human Rights, but they succeeded in introducing this new inclusive language to say women. The Commission began working after its founding to directly introduce women's rights to the international arena. I think that's part of the problem with the United States not signing on to CEDAW is you've heard the phrase feminazis, that sort of thing. Some people are ashamed to be called a feminist, you know, all of that nonsense we have in our country. Anyway, so the Commission began its work after its founding to directly introduce women's rights to the international arena, and this was achieved through a variety of means, most commonly through attempts to collect data that show discrimination occurring against women. And during this time, reproductive rights were included in the central action of the Commission, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, that is CEDAW, which was drafted by the Commission on the Status of Women. And it was entered into force in 1981, as I said, because it was ratified by majority of countries. This convention stipulated that with regards to reproductive rights, reproduction should not be a basis for discrimination. So you can see some of the basis for the problems with getting this ratified in this country. CEDAW is the only international human rights treaty that overtly references family planning. It states that it's a human right for women to decide freely and responsibly on the number and spacing of their children, and have access to the information, education, and means to enable them to exercise these rights. And any state party to the treaty is required to provide education on family planning and reproductive rights, including various forms of contraception. Forced abortion or sterilization constitute violations of this treaty. And here's another one much more recent that I think is pretty incredible. In December of 2022, the Islamic Republic of Iran was expelled from membership of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women following the death of Mahsa Amini, AMINI, and the violent crackdown against human rights protesters in Iran. And this is the first time a member had been expelled over its treatment of women in the history of Commission. Is anyone familiar with the death of Mahsa Amini? She was a young.
It was definitely in the news for a while. I remember.
Yeah, 2022. Yeah, she was. I think she was from Kurdistan and was visiting relatives in Iran, and she was picked up by those self-appointed police who who regulate how women are dressed, and they said she wasn't wearing her headdress properly.
Oh,
And
yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
As I remember.
They threw her in a van with some other women and they beat the crap out of her. And when they got her to the police station, she was unconscious in a coma. And they took her to the hospital and she died. And they said, oh, she just fainted. She had a heart attack. They brought up that when she was 8 years old, she had a benign tumor in her head that was removed. And that's what happened. And they refused to release even to her family the autopsy reports. They refused to release her body to her family. They let her family see her, but she was wrapped up like a mummy, and all they could see was her face and her feet. But witnesses in that police van told everybody, the public, what happened to her. That's our Commission for Status of Women. As you can see, this is a hard road to hoe, but they keep at it, they keep at it, they keep at it. Next slide, please. So Seroptimists has a huge presence at the United Nations. We have 21 Seroptimist representatives. We have 6 in New York. These list of places, there's United Nations facilities in all of these places. So we have 6 representatives in New York, 3 in Geneva, 4 in Vienna, 1 in Rome, 3 in Paris, 3 in Nairobi, and 1 in Bangkok. So basically the whole world here is represented. New York is the United Nations headquarters and home to the General Assembly. All areas of the United Nations work are discussed in New York. The center is also the headquarters of UN Women, the United Nations entity for gender equality and empowerment of women, created in 2010. So our team of 6 Seroptimist International UN representatives cover gender equality, sustainable development, financing for development, trafficking, migration, education, aging, and peace and security. The Seroptimist International UN representatives in New York, let's see if anyone knows these ladies: Betty Levy, Jacqueline Shapiro, Frances Zayodine, Maria Fernella Owinger, and Vanessa Triers. And there was an opening this year. The applications for that opening closed in December, but they were looking for a 6th member. Anyone know those people? No?
I saw them in Dublin, right?
Yeah. Geneva, the United Nations office in Geneva, is the 2nd biggest UN center after New York, and is a focal point for multilateral diplomacy, human rights, and peace and security. So the United Nations Human Rights Council and its human rights review mechanisms include CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, the Universal Periodic Review, and the UN's Refugee Agency. They're all based in Geneva. And their representatives provide a critical, our Seroptimist International representatives provide a critical opportunity to give recommendations to governments to ensure that actions are taken to ensure gender equality and women's and girls' access to their human rights and fundamental freedoms. Because who knows better than women what the needs and challenges are for women? In Vienna, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, that's where the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is, the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, and the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and the United Nations Convention on Organized Crime. So each one of these offices seem to have a specific area of interest. The Seroptimist International UN representatives there focus on a range of issues critical to eliminating violence against women and girls, including human trafficking, aging, and elder abuse, harmful traditional practices such as the female genital mutilation, which at the UN, they don't like saying that. They say FGM. They don't like saying female genital mutilation. Women in the workplace and women in the economy. The Seroptimist International UN representatives, could give you the names, I'm not sure anyone would know them: Marion Prechtel, Christine Peer, Martina Gredler, and Marcella Sigmund. It's just interesting to me, I got their names. In Rome, the United Nations World Food Program and the Food and Agricultural Organization are based in Rome. And this leads to a very focused program of work, and is, as such, Seroptimist International's UN representatives do focus on women's roles in food production and distribution. In Paris, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, we've all heard of UNESCO. They've got some pretty good public awareness. That's based in Paris, meaning that the Seroptimist International UN representatives there primarily focus on education. However, because UNESCO and the Non-Government Organization Committee there organize periodic forums on various issues, our representatives often adapt their workload in order to engage with those subjects of those forums, such as water for all and women in poverty. In Nairobi, the United Nations Office focuses on environmental issues and covers the work of the United Nations Environmental Program. That's UNEP, UNEP. And those representatives focus on issues such as rural women, disaster risk reduction, and the effects of climate change on women and girls. And I will tell you who those Optus International representatives are. There's only two. It's Betty Oluch and Maria Muia, MUIA. She was one of the founding chartering members of the African Federation. She worked in it for 12 years. And now she's at Optus International representative in Nairobi. And Bangkok, that was established early in 1947. That's the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And it's the regional development arm of the United Nations for that Asia Pacific region. And their work focuses on some of the region's greatest challenges, including macroeconomic policy, financing for development, energy, transport, environment and development, and social development. There's only one UN representative there, even though it's a pretty busy office. Can we have the next slide? How to interact. So you can support gender equality and women's empowerment, number one, by being a Seroptimist around the world, by getting involved in a number of ways, and by taking part of one of the United Nations women's campaigns or professional networks, raise awareness on social media, or donate to help them to achieve their mission. You can apply to the State of California Commission of Status of Women or your local county or city commission because your voice matters and your actions make it real. You can apply to be a delegate at the annual Commission of Status of Women session in New York. Now, they called for those applications in November or December or something. And on a fluke, I just applied. And then they accepted it, but they only, each NGO, non-governmental organization, only is allowed a certain number of delegates. But then what Seroptimist does is they go to some of these other women's organizations, said, do you have any open seats? Can we have
You take them?
the European Women's Lobby? But, I'll be a voice. So, and we used to have a UN women's organization here in San Francisco, but it disbanded. I don't know why. During COVID, it disbanded. I was a member for several years. So the UN Women, it still exists, and they have campaigns for generation equality, he for she, unite to end violence against women. These are all like committees. Planet 50-50 by 2030, step it up for gender equality. Some of these work for making men and women equal, and they want to include men. And the United Nations Women Networks are empower women. And I know politics. The little I know politics. I don't know if it has something to do with iPhones or not. I don't know. So next slide, please. Okay, so future every year, the Seroptimist International President leads the Seroptimist delegation at the Commission of Status of Women in New York. It's too late now, but try to attend next year by applying. What's 2 weeks in New York in March when it's snowing? The 68th session of the Commission on the Status of Women will take place March 11th to 22, and will consider the priority theme of accelerating the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. So next slide, I will tell you all about it. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you can see what a great partner the Commission on Status of Women is for Seroptimist International, advocating for the empowerment of women and girls. It's my thing. Here we go. That's Here I am.
There you are.
Thank you.
Any questions or clarifications I can give you guys? It's a big job, isn't it?
It's a lot. It's fascinating how many organizations are out there. And I mean, we know we had a member of our club who headed up the Commission on the Status of Women in San Francisco for years and kind of introduced a lot of us to more depth on this, which was really, really interesting. And she was leading a delegation in 2020. Of course, that was like the beginning of COVID. So that got canceled, but some people were already there. And
Shannon Sutherland, a member of our club, went to that. She was like, got my tickets, I got my hotel, I'm going anyway.
Like she just went and had a vacation. So, it's really, really interesting. I did have a question. I have to think of what it was though, because I forgot.
Oh man.
Something I thought of early in your presentation.
Yeah. So what it amounts to is the United Nations, big deal. The Commission on Status of Women advises the United Nations on everything about women, women's needs and equality, and the Disruptors International is right in there.
I know what I was going to ask you. Because I remember we also had someone else come to speak to our club who was connected. I don't remember her name. It wasn't Emily. It was someone else. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, it was the president of UN Women.
Okay. Yeah.
And I believe we gave her a Ruby Award
That's right.
one year.
And I remember that we, at that time, we're talking about the Equal Rights Amendment and where that fits in with all of this. Do you remember? She referenced it, I think. Or is that something that Commission on Status of Women is? I mean, that's a United States thing. I get
It's
that.
a United States thing. Yeah. Nice amendment.
I just have a vague recollection of that coming up, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. I think because my sense is I think it finally got ratified.
So Gail, what's a Ruby Award?
It used to be, they renamed it. It used to be the oh gosh, do you remember? It was the Women Opportunities Award was Live Your Dream, and the Ruby Award was to honor.
It was just an outstanding service to the community, not necessarily a Seroptimist.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Like
but I can't remember.
recognizing a woman in the community that had
It
done
had another name though. That
well,
does anyone?
it did have another name.
And they renamed it when they were renamed like Live Your Dream and things. They renamed it Ruby because she was the first Federation president.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what it used to be.
I think I have heard of that then.
I remember we used to do that. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, we used to give that award.
But Columbus
Was it women?
still do
Women Helping Women or something?
something
remember.
like that.
Women
Yes,
helping women.
women helping women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was for a non-seroptimist. And the point was to honor someone who's done a lot for the community and maybe even draw them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Seroptimus is at the table of the UN. Are there any other clubs that are at the table like us? Like Kiwanis, Rotary, and that kind of thing?
I don't know.
We don't think so, Peggy.
But they don't have.
They have to be non-governmental organizations.
Their mission is.
And to be focused on women. I mean,
That's pretty a big honor for us. That's huge.
Like the other women's organizations.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
there's other women organizations like the non-governmental organizations like the seat that I finally got, which is the European Women's Lobby. So, but I don't. They're because their focus is equality for women and stuff. They do allow men in, and I think that on the current Commission on Status of Women, there's at least one man who's a little controversial, as I understand it.
like that male CFO.
We should be proud of that.
We should be very proud of that, absolutely, because this is being driven by women in the early 40s when the war was over and the men and boys came back from the war, and the women who had been working and doing all sorts of interesting things were just shoved aside, and fed pills and told you're going to be mothers now. Stay in your lane, and people like Chief Justice Rose Bird, who was the Chief Justice when I was in law school in the late 70s, she couldn't get, no law firm would hire her. Most of the women of our baby boom age could not get jobs in law firms because we were women. And it wasn't until the late 70s that there was a big push. And that's why the Year of the Woman was so important in those days.
Yeah.
That all they could do was they could teach, they could do administrative things, in government agencies, or they could open their own practices.
Gloria, you want to share
Gail,
your
just for
background?
curiosity, when did you become judge? What
I
year?
became a judge in 2003.
2003. Okay.
That's when I joined Seroptimus too.
Wow.
And at that time, I mean, when you become a judge, I belonged to other organizations that were legal and law oriented, and did a lot of volunteer work for those. But being a lawyer is an advocate, and a judge can't belong to an advocacy type of organization. The beauty of Sir Optimus is that we don't do politics technically.
So, Peggy, if you
Yes.
Linda just Googled this, so it's like list of organizations with consultative status to the United Nations Economic and Social Council, so UNESCO.
And it has the year that they became.
It's on Wikipedia, so it's like
Oh yeah, good old Wikipedia.
International Alliance of Women. Looking for
Zonta.
International Council of Women, Zonta. The Women's Planned Parenthood Federation. Makes sense,
So other organizations that support women equality.
but not like Rotary or not like
No, I don't.
not
Well,
service
no.
clubs in the traditional sense. We don't see
Because,
any
yeah, they're
others.
not,
Right.
mission is not aligned with what,
Yeah,
with women and equality.
but this is just the UN. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
this
this
isn't just
is
women.
just women. This is
Okay.
UN in general. I mean, we
Yeah.
do have a really big seat.
Yeah.
Which is
And they, yeah, in the United Nations world or New York, everybody knows what Sir Optimus is because we do all the work. We wrote CEDAW.
you know.
That's big.
Yep.
Well, the Commission on Status of Women wrote CEDAW, but who do you think's in the Commission on Status of Women?
Exactly.
Sir Optimus.
These are in red.
Yeah, they're kind of like one and the same, they're alter egos or something. Twin separated at birth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because we were established in 1921. Commission on Status of Women was established in 1947, and all this work that we did, Sir Optimus did during the war to keep those Sir Optimus clubs
Yeah.
vibrant and working, and when they had to go underground and stuff. We are survivors.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information. It was a lot of information to try and pass on to you.
It is a lot. Yeah, it's
But you can see how important we are, and and as you progress in your careers and your Sir Optimist careers, and if you want to do more, I mean, this might be the step that you want to take. Especially if you're good at research or like to travel.
yeah.
And Sharon Fisher shared with us some of the work she was doing as this SI president, and helping those girls stay in school and things. And that's a big fight for some of these developing countries to keep girls in school and not take them out, make them work, marry them off.
Yeah. Look,
And what's happened recently in Uganda? Uganda is now the women in Uganda are doing bird watching tours, and apparently they have a lot of birds in Uganda. And it used to be men only, because women are not allowed to whistle. Do you believe? So women bird watching because you need to be able to mimic the birds.
to be a tour guide.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And also in Uganda, you weren't in our club at the time, but we had that woman who got that Ruby Award. It wasn't called that then, but she loves to climb mountains and go to those really high, dangerous mountains where you can only make 1,000 feet in one day, and then you got to stop because you can't breathe and stuff.
Right.
And she was born with a heart defect and had lots of operations, and finally overcame all of that. And what did she decide to do? She decided to throw her body into these dangerous kind of sports. But she likes to climb that mountain. There's a big mountain in Uganda, but she didn't want to have guides that were men. She taught the women how to do it, but the women were never allowed to be guides on that mountain because the gods wouldn't allow it.
Oh my goodness.
It would be bad luck, blah, 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 blah.
Huh.
So that's all the men did all day was, they waited for a tour, and then they would do a guide, and then they'd sit around drinking coffee and blah, blah, blah.
Incredible.
Yeah, and she had to work with the government to get them to allow it. And there was pushback. And
On something simple,
Good.
essentially, not.
Yeah.
Sorry, the gods.
yeah, so we're pretty lucky where we live, and I know that that we all have to face certain discrimination. When I was in law school, I would be dragging these giant books around on the bus, and someone would say, "Oh, are you going to be a legal secretary?"
Oh, I'm gonna be a judge.
And when I became a lawyer and I would, go to court and I wore suits and I pull my hair back real tight in a bun to try and make myself look older because I have this baby face and stuff. And I was talking to some lawyer and all he ever talked about was golf. He just put me to sleep. But I'm talking to him. Another lawyer comes out and says, "Oh, are you assisting Mac here? Are you a law student?" And I even had a judge say one time, because traditionally, the more serious cases like murder cases, a fairly inexperienced attorney will second seat with an experienced attorney, and you get experience that way so that you can be confident taking cases or being appointed by the court to take cases. And the judge couldn't pronounce my last name, and he would say things like, "Well, Miss, if you are an attorney," and then he'd go on with whatever comment.
Oh my God.
This was in the
isn't even
80s.
that long ago.
This was in the 80s. Yes.
Right.
And then you can see in my court, when it's a male presiding judge, the males get all the most interesting cases and assignments, and the women don't,
Still.
but still, you get a women presiding judge. And when, Terry Jackson, who was a member of our club for a minute, when she was presiding judge, she was determined that every one of her judges would get a murder case. So everyone would get that experience, and she almost achieved it in her, 2 years there. The women judges, when they're presiding judges, are the best administrators because they're just more even-handed with the whole thing. They don't have their favorite boys club, because a lot of the judges are from big law firms, and big law firms give a lot of money to the governor, and the governor makes his appointments.
That's how it
And
goes.
so, I got my seat by election. I campaigned, had to do a runoff as well, and got to know all the people and see all the people and stuff. And there's something to be said for running for office if you don't have the money for political connections. I was a solo practitioner. I was not a member of a law firm. So that's the only way I could do it. And I think half the judges in San Francisco do it by election because
Yeah, you can't
they're not from big law firms giving lots of money.
Yeah.
But that's how you do it. You got to start small and build it up. I just wish that we could have done more did anyone do the math for me? I guess I have to do it.
I did do it in my head. So 79 years.
Oh, really? Okay. 2023.
Back me up,
Oh.
Julie.
Yeah, 79 years. Yeah. You would hope there'd be more progress in 79 years.
I just can't do it on demand.
Not on Jeopardy.
We're too afraid of being wrong. That's why we don't commit to doing math in our head.
Right.
We can't be wrong. You expect us to always be right.
Right.
I forgot the numbers.
It's a lot of pressure.
1945 to 1923 to 2023. Isn't it hard when you have to go online and register for something they want to hold you, and you have to put your birth date, and you have to keep scrolling down and scrolling
Keep
down
scrolling. I'm like, oh
to
my
get to your
gosh,
birth year?
I've been scrolling a long time.
You know that my mom got to the point because she lived to 107 and it wouldn't let her go
Was it
far
on?
enough. Yeah, they wouldn't
Yeah.
let her go far enough.
Hey, yeah.
I aspire to
I
be
wanna
off
get
the
to
grid that
place.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my goal. I want my birthday to not be an option.
Yes. At least a year. Just ask me for the month and the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1900, sure.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. Well, thank you, Gail, as always.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that you got something out of it. It's kind of
It
a
was
dry thing,
great.
It's very interesting. Thank you.
but yeah,
Very
I'm
good.
pretty impressed with Sir Optimus and the Commission status of women. It's very
Yes, it's
impressive.
great.
So I'm going to go to this thing
Thank you
in
for
March.
all your information, Gail. Have fun on your vacation. Wear
Yeah.
sunscreen.
Yes.
I hate going to winter
Wear
places in the winter,
sunscreen.
but
Is that our sparkle star?
That's
Oh,
our
yes.
Gold
I'm
Star.
going to Mexican Riviera in February. Then Sparkle Star. Then I'm going to go to the winter country in New York, which I hate the winter. I'm from Alaska, but I hate the winter. But I'll go
There you
hang
go.
out at the UN, take pictures in
Don't
front of
live there
statues.
now, so you live in the primo weather place,
Yeah.
except for the rain lately.
So great to see all of you. Thank you so much for
know.
coming tonight.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job.
Bye.
Bye-bye.